one of the things our party is supposed to represent that sometimes some members of our party forget about is we are supposed to be the voice for the disenfranchised, for those people who cannot take care of themselves and cannot speak for themselves. And for God's sake, can we speak up for them again and not leave them out of our dialogue? Here's what I think. And I've had, as you probably have to tell by your question, I've had some personal experience with this. In addition to running a poverty center for the last few years at the University of North Carolina, I've actually been to a lot of places in this state that help provide shelter for the homeless. I've done it in, I don't know how many, 20 or 30 states in the country. I've done the same thing. And for years before I ever got into politics, I was on the board of Urban Ministries, which is a faith-based group in North Carolina that, among other things, took care of the homeless. So I have seen, if you can see, by the way, the direct relationship between the federal government stops funding, local programs stops providing help to local governments. There's a direct relationship between that and how many people are living on the streets and have nowhere to live. I think we ought to do a number of things. I think we ought to have 1 million more Section 8 housing vouchers than we have in this country today. We have lots of low-income families who are waiting anywhere from 5 to 8 years to get a Section 8 housing voucher. They have nowhere to live. They're left either living with relatives or living in shelters. That's one thing. And I think, by the way, those housing vouchers ought to be used differently than they've been used in the past. What I worry about Section 8 housing is what we've done in the past is we've segregated people. We've basically clustered poor people together and people of color together, particularly in urban areas. And I don't think it's healthy. I don't think we want to isolate the poorest Americans. I don't think we want to see, well, what we saw, I mentioned New Orleans earlier, what we saw in the lower ninth ward of New Orleans. That kind of economic and racial segregation in America is not healthy. And so what we should do use these big, more housing vouchers to create migration, particularly for low-income families. To give them we don't want to live in a country where rich people are the only people who move around. We want people to be able to move, to have mobility. So use these vouchers in a different, more aggressive way so that low-income families not only have a place to live, which is what the million housing vouchers will accomplish, but actually allow them to move across the economic and racial barriers. I have to tell you, this is an area that I know more than you ever want to know about, because in fact we have a book coming out just in a couple of weeks that lays out a very comprehensive plan for what we should do to end poverty in America. But I'll mention one other idea while you and I are talking. One other thing we can do is for a lot of low-income families, they have, including people who work, people you're talking about, they're incredibly vulnerable. Payday, predatory lenders. They have no bank account. They have nothing to save. So I think we ought to do a couple of things. We ought to have a national predatory lending law that regulates predatory lending. We also ought to teach financial literacy to low-income families. And as part of that process, we ought to set up individual development accounts, that's the technical term, instead of bank accounts for low-income families so that they have a place that they can put money if they're able to save anything. And then we ought to match what they're able to save so that they have an incentive to save and they can create some assets. So I have lots of other ideas. Those are two big ones.